Well, here we are out in the field today. We're going to winterize a 2012 Nautique. We're up in the boat now. As you can see, it's a really nice PCM 343. It's got the catalyst. And what we're going to do is drain all the water out of this, remove the thermostat back here, make sure we purge all the water out. We're going to blow through it a little bit, and then we're going to seal everything back up, and we're going to pump it in. On these 343s, the NOx sensors on the engine are, and you can't see because it's too dark. There it is. The NOx sensors are the drain plugs. So you just have to disconnect the NOx sensors, pull them out, run your little screwdriver through there, get all the debris out of the way, and let it drain. This is a Gen 6 block, I believe. And we'll drain these in the bottom of the exhaust. And we'll get moving. Don't forget to pull your drain plug. Last thing you want to do is freeze all this water in your hull. This is something, you know, you'll see on these newer motors, but it doesn't just drain from the bottom of the manifold. It actually drains at the bottom of the, what I'm going to call a catalytic converter. So don't forget to grab this one also, or you're going to leave some water in there, and then you'll dilute your antifreeze. So to do it, and it's not going to do you any good to pull the connector off. You actually have to hook to this bolt and remove the NOx sensor out of the plug. Keep hold of the bolt because it will be in the bilge, and there's not a lot of room, and no sense fishing for things you don't have to. 1-inch socket to loosen that NOx sensor bung up, and I've already loosened it up. And a lot of times if you pull these and you don't see water, there's sediment. This gentleman's an absolute fanatic about his boat, so you just look at it, it's just pure water. But if you ever pull that and nothing comes out, make sure you stick a pickup in there and wallow it out, because you might have mud settlement. The best thing about working on a return customer's boat is you get a pair of your sunglasses back. Hell yeah. Steps on the starboard side. This side's a little tighter. It's got some electronics in the way, so we use a wrench on this side on the catalyst. I didn't expect a whole ton. It's kind of a straight across log system, so anything that was in it drained out of the port side. But you always want to check, you never know. And this would be a very expensive fail on the shop, so do your due diligence. Port side drain, very well labeled, exactly what you would expect on a boat of this caliber. You kind of rock them back and forth. Last thing you want to do is break it. Very clean. I haven't had to poke any of these ports out. Like I said, he really treats this boat well. And there's the starboard side. NOx sensor's already removed. I'm kind of skipping steps. I'm on my own here. Clean water. The river's really clean this year. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but everything I've winterized this year, man, there's been very little sediment, and the river's the clearest we've ever seen it. It's unbelievable. Have here is your oil cooler. A lot of you guys will hear me tell you to clean out your oil cooler. Nobody can figure out where it's ever at. This one actually has a drain on it, which helps us because the oil cooler is the first stop, you can say, for your fresh water. Your fresh water comes into the motor, goes through your impeller, and the first stop is this oil cooler. Well, it's got a honeycomb in it, and that's what your oil runs through. Any debris will get clogged up on this side. So if you eat an impeller, you suck some trash, you eat some leaves, you trash bag, who knows? You know what, I've seen you guys do it all. It amazes me. But this is where they're at. This is on the starboard side under the motor. You can always just put your hand right on the water pump, follow that hose down, and I promise you, in every single boat, your oil cooler is the first stop. And this thing's pretty awesome. It's got a drain, which is awesome because there's a lot of water that gets caught up in that hose. And we're winterizing, so we got to get this water out because diluting our antifreeze isn't going to benefit us. You know, that could be you put too much water in it and you're going to freeze, and I'm telling you, you're looking at, you know, on the cheap side, $12,000 to pull a motor. By the time you buy the block and we reinstall it, you know what I mean, it'll blow your mind. So drain your oil coolers. What I used to do is pull that hose clamp right there off. On the older ones, they don't have a drain, so you got to pull the hose clamp off and you drain it for the season. But anytime you're not getting even cooling, you ate an impeller and you're not getting even cooling, this guy right here is your issue. I promise you. Here's a real good one. Always check their drain plug. You know, all that water I just drained out of the motor filled this hole, and he had his drain plug in. So what I like to do on these ski boats is I like to wrap this up in a towel and put it right up on the dash. I take the thermostats out and I put the thermostat with these. It's just good practice to pull your plug. If something was to happen, you got filled up with water, you don't want all that in there icing up, you know what I mean? So pull that drain plug for your people or yourself. Here's a little personal practice I like to do for these freshwater cooled motors. I like to pull the thermostat. I really do. I for as cheap as a thermostat is, you're running it in water. Look at it. You know what I mean? If you own a boat, this is way less than a tank of fuel. I suggest they do it every couple years, if not every season, because I'm going to pull this thing and hang it. Look at it. You know what I mean? All rusty and corroded. This is a raw water cooled motor. If you have an intercooled motor, then no big deal, because it's actually sitting in glycol, but this thing's sitting in river water and it just looks like hell. You know what I mean? And you wouldn't believe how many calls I get Memorial Day weekend to come running out. They got an overheating boat, they've done all the maintenance, but they just keep skipping this puppy. And you know, back before COVID, they were $6. You know what I mean? So whether guys liked it or not, I put one in and I charged them for it, and it keeps me from having to run out and do emergency calls and bail you out and charge you $150 for a $6 part. Now they're like $15, and yeah, that sucks, but $15 in the boating world, if you're crying over $15, you might want to get a canoe or a kayak or something like that. One more thing about the thermostat, and the reason why I pull it is because I don't circulate these motors and get them hot. I come here, I drain your liquids, I drain your fluid, all the water, and then I just pump antifreeze right into these things. And if you were to try to do that with a cold thermostat, it would be bypassing straight to the manifolds and the block. You know what I mean? Not everything's going to gain antifreeze at that point in time. Some people argue with that, and I'm fine with that, but I just do things the way I do things. I've been doing them like this for a long time. We haven't had any issues on anybody's boat. Well, to be honest with you, a few years back I did. It was the first time I winterized this Nautique, and I mean, it's one of the nicest boats. It's one of the newest boats in the fleet with one of the most technologically advanced motors in our area. And I didn't know this thing had a heater in it, and I didn't blow the heater out, and I popped it. And Rob, being the guy that he is, he's so awesome that he just called me up in the spring and said, hey, I got hot water running out on my feet and it's burning me and I don't know what to do. And I said, oh boy, I didn't know it had a heater, and I didn't winterize that. You know, I was honest with him, because lying to somebody's just going to cost you to lose a customer, you know, and we're going to have to eat it, you know what I mean? I was like, I'll buy the heater core, and he said, hey man, don't worry about that kind of stuff, because I took it to the Nautique dealer, and the first year I owned it, and when I fired it up in the spring, it burnt my feet and they blew the heater core. I don't use the heater core. I don't care about this thing. It cost me all this money. I'm not going to replace it. So we bypassed it. We blocked it off. You can see where I blocked off the heater hose to go in, and he was cool with it. But just pay attention. Sometimes it pays to do some research. Okay, here we go. We got our secret sauce mixed. There's 4.5 gallons in there. And we've got it running down. What we do here is we just pull it off the skimmer, jam the hose up in her as far as we can, and we're ready to kick it. This thing's pretty awesome. It's a push button starting system. So here we go. See it. There she goes. That's our fogger coming out of the back. That's the smoke you're seeing. That's all you do. Just sit here and be patient. Let her eat. She wrote. She's pretty well winterized. We've got to just put the bits and pieces back together. We're going to go around. I'm going to pour some in the screen down here since it didn't get any. There's no water in it. I drained it. But that's it for the Air Nautique for the season. We'll see this thing in the spring to fire it back up. Well, here we go. Here's a good little tip. What I like to do, I like to buy these guys a box of dryer sheets, and I like to throw them in here. I got some here. I got some over here. This thing's about to be wrapped up in plastic for 6 months around here. And yeah, look at the mess. She's quite a bit to take apart. We like to put some dryer sheets throughout the boat, because then when you open her up in the spring, it's not going to make you want to throw up from the bilge smell, and your ladies will appreciate it. And it really does work. Just give it a shot. Well, there's the Air Nautique for the winter, all wrapped up. We shrink wrapped this for him probably about 3-4 years ago, and I left enough of an envelope wrinkled up to where he's actually gotten 4 years out of this shrink wrap. And that's what I always tell people. It's a very expensive process, but if you take it off and you keep it clean, like as soon as you know, give it a bath before you unwrap the boat in the spring, let it dry, and then take this thing off. I usually put a couple puckers in it right about here. I try not to weld them too hard. Sometimes I'll just try to tape them, so because this thing's going to shrink when the sun hits it and the heat hits it. It's going to shrink up, and we don't always get lucky, but if you do it right and you use your head, and this thing's obviously protected very well. He keeps it in here all the time. You'll get quite a few years out of your shrink wrap. So there you go, guys. That's the end of the season for the Air Nautique. See you next spring.